On today's show, the Hawks are now 2-0 after a nice home victory over the Charlotte Hornets. It wasn't always pretty like it was on Wednesday in the same fashion, but in the end, Trae Young had a huge game, and the Hawks led wire to wire in a pretty intriguing victory. We'll get into all of what transpired, the takeaways, the observations, and much more, and all of that is coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1831 of Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Brad Rowland, coming to you on a Friday evening here in late October. And today's podcast is brought to you by the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. Begin the season with a big return at FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet. You can start with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. I also want to tell you at the top of the podcast, as I always do, to make us your first listen each and every day here at Locked On Hawks. Check us out and subscribe to the show anywhere you happen to find your podcasts. We are on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on Overcast, we're also on YouTube. Please like this video as you are watching it, and please subscribe on that platform. I appreciate everybody listening to the podcast as always. And today we'll be diving into what became a nice win for the Hawks, a 125-120 victory over the Hornets on a Friday night in Atlanta. And the Hawks are 2-0. That's the biggest takeaway. Obviously, we'll get into more depth than that, but the Hawks have held serve in two games that I would say they are supposed to win in some respects. They went out and did that in both of these games. Another game that was probably too close for comfort, honestly, but also a game in which the Hawks were, in my mind, pretty clearly the better team. They never trailed in the game. They were about as many as 15 points at one point in the game. They let that lead kind of slipped away, and that's kind of frustrating, I'm sure, for Hawks fans, but it was pretty tight in the fourth quarter. I get all that, but Trae Young was great again. That's both games this season, basically, for him. Same with Dyson Daniels, who was awesome in this game on both ends of the floor. Got around a big game at the forward spot for Atlanta, and the Hawks did enough to overcome some very clear issues, like rebounding, for instance, in this game, and then also a barrage of threes by Charlotte. But all of that still led to a close-fought victory and basically a push on the point spread. The Hawks were 5-point favorites in this game, according to FanDuel. That's where the game landed. So credit to FanDuel. They nailed this one. But in the end, I will begin with the offense and kind of give you my overall takeaways on this contest. And the Hawks were really good on offense, broadly speaking, in this one. A 119 offensive rating, that's very, very good. Charlotte was not great defensively. I have to say that at the top of the show, particularly without Mark Williams, their best defensive center. But nothing that the Hawks did in this game was weird or out of the ordinary. They were just good on offense, basically across the board. They shot 58% on twos in this game. That's like their second straight game where it was actually really good. Inside the arc, they were better from three than they were on Wednesday, 14 of 38. That's not crazy as far as the accuracy. 37% is about league average or a little bit above that. But they took more in this game, which I was encouraged by. They got to the line 38 times again after 46 on Wednesday. This time, though, they only missed 5 after they missed 13 free throws on Wednesday. That's, of course, an uptick there. They had 64% true shooting in this game. That is an elite figure. They had 25 assists, only 14 turnovers in a fast-paced game. That's very solid. Only one thing that they really didn't do on offense in this game was generate offensive rebounds, which I'll come back to the rebounding disparity in this game in a second, but they actually did get out and run once again. It's been very clear through two games that the Hawks are trying to push the pace and run and generate easy buckets. But in both games, the Hawks have actually run a lot in terms of percentage of possessions and really intriguing stuff there, but they have not been very efficient when they actually have run. Part of that's Jalen Johnson is struggling, but he's not alone there necessarily. The Hawks have 18 fast break points, which is actually quite a bit, but it probably should have been more, honestly. But anyway, it'll come, but I do like the pace, and the Hawks are built to play that way, which I'm encouraged by. They were -4 in the game without Trae on the floor, which I can kind of live with, I would say. You know, as long as you're winning the minutes with Trae, you're probably fine and just not getting killed when he sits, although he played a lot of minutes in this contest, which is certainly notable. But the offense was really solid, especially when you factor in that Jalen Johnson was not particularly good in this game and no Bogey. As we'll touch on earlier, I had a sort of a pseudo-emergency podcast yesterday talking about Bogey's injury, but he's going to be out for a little bit, I think. But at the very least, he was out tonight. So the Hawks basically had one guy struggle, their third best player not play, and they still scored at a very high level the entire game. So on defense, it was less spectacular, I would say, from an overall numbers standpoint. They had a 116 defensive rating or so in this game, which is pretty bad. Not incredibly bad, but not great. The biggest reason for that, though, is that Charlotte shot 21 of 51 from three. That's 41% on huge, huge volume. So I don't love the volume aspect. The Hawks giving up that many attempts is not great. I will say, though, a lot of those attempts were pretty heavily contested. The Hornets are going to be a high volume 3-point shooting team this year, I think, under Charles Lee. LaMelo Ball is not afraid to shoot. Same with Trey Mann. Same with Seth Curry, Miles Bridges. They have guys who will bomb threes, and it took a lot in this game. The Hawks were not great defending them, I would say, but still, I've watched the game back at this point in time. I think the Hawks certainly held the Hornets in check as far as the accuracy, as far as the volume is concerned. And really, watching it again, the Hornets made more threes than they could probably rightfully expect to make. They weren't like shooting wide open threes. Sometimes, even on wide open threes, guys should miss. Sometimes they're not guaranteed to make threes, but the shot quality was not as good as the accuracy for Charlotte. So that's probably a good sign overall for Atlanta, even if the volume was probably higher than you'd want. Beyond that, though, the Hawks were really good inside the arc. They actually allowed less than 40% shooting on twos. That's an elite figure for the Hawks. They did allow too many free throw attempts. They were almost 40 in this game. 31 in this game for the Hornets. But it was a weirdly officiated game. I would say this, my only actual concern beyond a little bit of 3-point volume defensively in this game was the defensive glass. And that was an actual concern. They were actually bad in that area. Quinn Snyder kind of downplayed it a little bit. He did acknowledge the problem. It was definitely the case. It was unavoidable in this game. But the Hawks were not great on the glass on Wednesday either. It was much worse tonight. They allowed 22 offensive rebounds and the Hornets did, I should say, grabbed more than 40% of their own misses. Those are really, really ugly factors and ugly numbers. Some of these were kind of, I don't want to say lucky, but like fortunate bounces, like lots of long rebounds. It wasn't like the Hawks were giving up layups on these. In fact, the efficiency for Charlotte on their second chance opportunity was actually not very good. That's still a lot of offensive rebounds to allow. And I don't think it's going to be a huge issue moving forward. Especially given this is the same roster that's actually bigger than it was a year ago that wasn't so bad on the glass. I think when Capella plays, they're generally pretty good. When Capella and Jalen play together, they're pretty good. Honestly, really good on the glass usually. So I'm not worried. If anything, they probably should be better this year on the glass than they were last year. They are bigger, etc. But it's an area to at least circle, and I'll be monitoring it in the future because they were not good at all on the rebounding battle in this game. Beyond that, though, the havoc creation was there again. I didn't lead with it like I did on Wednesday when they were certainly able to produce on that level, but they had only allowed 22 assists and they generated 18 turnovers in this game. That's a great ratio. They had 11 steals and 9 blocks. Those are huge numbers. 3 guys had multiple steals, 3 guys had multiple blocks in this game. And here's a crazy stat, probably the stat of the night, courtesy of Hawks PR. This is the first time since 1986, so almost 40 years, the Hawks have had 2 straight games with at least 11 steals and at least 8 blocks. One more time, almost 40 years since they actually had back-to-back games with this many steals and this many blocks in the same game. Is that sustainable? No. They won't be doing this every night. But the addition of course, Dyson Daniels is the headliner. We'll come back to him later on. But more size, more aggressiveness defensively, not playing nearly small in the backcourt, et cetera, et cetera. They have enough guys on this team that like to create havoc defensively. Dyson is the embodiment of that, but that's a very, very good sign. And look, big picture in this game, the Hawks were not perfect in this game or on Wednesday. But in general, I would say it's probably safe to be pretty pleased with the way things have gone so far. The big thing is 2-0, but individually, as we'll get to more later on in the podcast, Trae's been outstanding. They're getting a lot from Dyson, a lot from Hunter. Okongwu was just okay today, but he was great on Wednesday, and that's obviously just fine, the combination of those two things for him. And they've won 2 games now with Jalen not playing well, with Bogey not playing well in the first game and missing a second game, with 2 guards down in Kobe and Bogey right now. And they still, and by the way, they allowed great shooting from 3-point range, accuracy-wise, to both teams, and they still won both games. And yes, they were at home. Yes, they were playing not so great opponents. That all matters. But I'll say this before I move on to the rest of the podcast. In my mind, these are the kind of games, Wednesday and Friday, that the Hawks would have at least sometimes lost in the last couple of years. Maybe not every time, but they kind of found a way to lose sometimes in the last couple of years. In some close games, some games that they probably should win. And look, nothing is easy in the NBA. I will always say that. If you're a recurring listener, you will know that. If you're a new listener, get ready for me to say this a lot. Teams can be favored in the NBA. I get that. The Hawks were favored in both these games. They should have been favored. Nothing is assured. The best team can lose to the worst team in the NBA. It does happen, especially in the regular season. With that said, winning these 2 games when things did not go perfectly, like a lot of things didn't go that well for the Hawks as far as the underlying metrics are concerned, and to still get wins is pretty impressive, and I'll leave that there for now. But the Hawks are 2-0, and their first big test, personnel-wise, opponent-wise, comes on Sunday, which we'll talk about later on, as they go to Oklahoma City for their first road game of the season as well. But we'll dive more into this game, some takeaways, my observations throughout the contest, my player-by-player evaluations, and more. But first, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 10 million members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or pick less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Now up to 100 times the money on PrizePicks, which is as little as 4 correct picks. Also, they are the best way to get on the action in sports in most states. That includes California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks puts our members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you get your money as fast as 15 minutes later. PrizePicks also invented the flex play. That means you actually get to still cash out if your lineup is not absolutely perfect. Double the money even if one of your picks does not hit. Spend your basketball weekends, football weekends, etc. at PrizePicks, and know that the season's ongoing now, of course. So it's a great time to go ahead and get set up with the folks at PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app right now and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA when you get there. From there, $50 is instantly yours when you play $5. That code is LOCKEDONNBA at PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't have to win to receive that $50 bonus. It is guaranteed for you. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, and we'll dive in now to how this game kind of unfolded along the way. And there was a lot going on here. This was an absolute marathon of a basketball game. 2 hours and 32 minutes of a regulation game is crazy, and that's how long it took. There were reviews, there were tons of fouls, tons of free throws, lots of whistles, and it was a weird one. But headlining things at the outset was that Dyson Daniels had the LaMelo Ball assignment throughout the game. Now, if you look at the box score, LaMelo had 34 points, and he made 9 threes. That's obviously impressive, but Dyson did a really good job on LaMelo when he was playing. For one, Ball had 10 turnovers and 4 assists in the game. So he shot great from 3, like worth acknowledging that. Dyson was in his chest quite a bit in this one. Now, there were some foul concerns, but he was the primary matchup. And look, it's nice to have a guy on your roster that is very clearly equipped and then going to be tasked with that role night in and night out. Like, there was no doubt in anybody's mind at the open of this game who was going to be defending defending LaMelo Ball. This Dyson's role, basically 1 through 3, best player on the team, there he's going to be, and he was in this game. The Hawks actually opened this game 7-0 with a run, 5 points from Trae at the outset. He was really good there. Trae also defensively was really impressive in this game. He began this one with 2 steals in the first 5 minutes. He drew offensive foul at the start. He was very active. That continued the entire way. A couple of rough sequences, though, I would say, throughout this first quarter. There was one where Hunter missed Capella, I think, back-to-back times for pretty easy buckets. Just didn't find him, and then missed shots as a result of that. Rotationally, no huge surprises, but there was some foul trouble that kind of altered things throughout the game. I know I mentioned it earlier once and then also yesterday on the show, but no Bogey and no Kobe Buffkin in this game. So the first subs were Garrison Matthews, actually, and Okongwu, and then V. Krejci a little bit after that. V played with Trae a little bit in this one. After he was just the backup point guard in the first game, V played 15 minutes in this one. And I think 7 or 8 of those were actually next to Trae. So that's notable in some ways. He'll actually get some win minutes, I would imagine, as long as Bogey is out. Ricochet was in the 4th guy off the bench. He got to the line right away. He was not fantastic in this one, but certainly he played a normal share, I would say. They also played about as small and about as big as they can in the same half. So early on, they played a lineup, not necessarily by height, because they are pretty lengthy in some of these spots, but they played a lineup that had Trae, Garrison Matthews, V. Krejci, Ricochet at the 4, and Okongwu at the 5. Now, again, there's plenty of length there. Ricochet is a legitimate 6'9", 6'10". Veet is wing-sized, but Trae is their smallest point guard. Garrison is their smallest shooting guard. Veet is more of a guard than a 4. He's playing the 3. Ricochet is still pretty skinny for a 4, and then Okongwu at the 5 is obviously not a huge player. So they're pretty small there. And then later on, actually, they played a lineup in the second quarter with V to the point, Dyson, Ricochet at the 3, Jalen, and Capella, which is almost the exact opposite. Now, I guess they could play Jalen at the 3 and then and basically 2 centers, but other than that, they couldn't really realistically get much bigger than that. So kind of the sort of dichotomy there in the first, basically 13 minutes of this game. Hawks actually up by 12 in the first quarter, which is kind of feels like it was a long time ago because the Hornets basically from that point forward made everything from 3. But in the first quarter, they scored 16 points. The Hawks held them to 6 of 25 from the field in the first quarter. But after that, Charlotte's three-point shooting just woke up, and that's why they became competitive. That's not the entire reason, but it's certainly a big one for the rest of the game. Again, pretty much the entire way through, the rebounding battle was not going the Hawks' way. There was one time early in the second quarter where the Hornets got back-to-back rebounds on like kind of tip balls. That was frustrating sequences. And then the foul trouble set in. So I said it before, but both Dyson and Veet got 3 fouls before the 9-minute mark of the second quarter. So that led to more Garrison. That led to more Ricochet on even trying to defend LaMelo as a primary guy. Zach played the entire second quarter and only played 19 minutes in the game, but played the entire second quarter because they kind of just had to. They had nobody else to throw at LaMelo Ball. So that made sense, but it's not something they actually wanted to do, obviously. It was basically they were treating the game as if Dyson was the primary and then Veet was his backup, basically, and then both those guys were out for a long period of time in the second quarter. There was a funny moment that I wanted to make note of where people have asked me kind of why Capella is spacing out further, something I talked about a little bit in the preseason discussions I had with Tyler and Glenn on the show. Clint's like standing at the three-point line pretty often in the corner, which obviously he can't shoot from there. But one reason why you do that is for spacing purposes. So kind of a funny one here, but Nick Richards, the starting center for the Hornets tonight, fell asleep in the lane and drew a 3-second violation defensively, which is actually netted a free point for the Hawks. That's not why you do that, but it's like a side benefit to having Clint that far out, because if the defender doesn't really realize it, they're not guarding Clint. So they can't be in the lane. And if he's not, counting, mistakes, free point, and that mattered in the game. A little mid-quarter swing that I thought was notable. Trae actually missed 2 threes on the same possession to go up by as many as 18 if one of those goes in. And then they didn't go in. LaMelo hit a 3, and then suddenly within the next 2 minutes, it was back down to 7. And that was really the only time in the game the Hawks threatened to really run away with the game, and that swing kind of pivoted towards Charlotte in that moment. Again, it was an incredibly long first half. There was an awesome possession late in the first half when they actually didn't score on the play, but it was Hunter breaking the paint, and then 3 or 4 great passes to a no-dip 3 by Ricochet. He missed it, but it was great, picturesque offense, I would say. They're up by 12 again briefly at the end of the first half, but then they kind of imploded for about 2 minutes. There was a 10-0 run. Yes, a 10-0 run by the Hornets, including back-to-back threes by LaMelo. And they go into halftime only up by 4, despite being up by 15 points, because, again, the Hornets were on fire. They hit 7 threes in the last 10 minutes of the first half, and that was only the start of things. After halftime, they started out by missing every shot basically for a while, but Dyson made 2 threes, which were very helpful. They never lost the lead. There were several times in the second half where it was a 1-point lead or a tie game, and they never lost the lead, which I actually heard Charles Lee, former Hawks assistant, now Hornets head coach, asked about this, and he kind of just made, I've been saying the same thing. They were 1 shot away several times from kind of kicking things into gear. Just never happened, which was a credit to the Hawks as well. They had some ugly possessions, though, in the middle of the third quarter. Jalen had one where he kind of just went up weakly at the rim and got denied. And then Clint threw an absolutely awful pass for a pick 6, basically, that led to a transition bucket. Quinn actually challenged a foul on Jalen with 7.5 minutes to go in the third quarter that I'm not sure he would normally challenge, but Jalen had been struggling so badly. I think he wanted to pick him up a little bit. It was also a terrible call in his defense. So they won the challenge, totally no contact, just a weird call. But that would have been Jalen's 3rd or 4th foul as well. They kind of pushed it ahead a little bit. I think I like this a little bit as well. Quinn took Dyson out pretty quickly as soon as LaMelo went to the bench several times in the second half, because they wanted to keep the fouls away from Dyson, especially with LaMelo off the court. And that happened even in crunch time in the fourth quarter, which I think was a good decision by Quinn and the staff. Trae actually was credited briefly with a 5th steal, and they took it away later on. So he actually ended up having 4, but at the time, the Hawks tweeted this out from their PR account. It would have been the first time he's ever had 25, 5, and 5 steals in the same game. And that was with 5 minutes to go in the third quarter. It's just that he never got one again. They took one away. So that stat kind of evaporated, but that was the case at one point. But one more big run by Charlotte. It was an 11-1 run with Trae off the court for part of that stretch late in the third quarter to lead the Hawks only up by 3 points going into the fourth, because the Hornets still made threes and got to the line a bunch in the third. I'll be quick about the fourth quarter, relatively speaking. Again, they were unconscious from 3. I think they had a stretch. By my count, they were 16 of 33 from 3 for a 2.5 quarter stretch, just bombing away, making all the threes, and that kept them alive in the game. The Hawks very clearly went to Capella early in the fourth with the explicit plan, at least if you're paying close attention, to go back to Okongwu to close the game. Clint played more than he did on Wednesday, but it was about what you expect in some respects. And look, this is going to be an every game push-pull. And Quinn talked about it pregame. I won't play the audio. It's a long quote, but Quinn kind of just doesn't want to tell you anything. But every game is going to be a give and take on the perimeter too, but especially at center. That was more obvious to watch. But in this game, Okongwu was not. I think it was much closer of a decision this time around. Wednesday, it was obvious Okongwu should have closed the game. Today, it was closer, but I was fine with Okongwu. But as soon as Clint came back in with 10 minutes to go, it's like basically an announcement. Hey, we're closing one on Onyeka, and that worked out pretty well in the end. But Dyson got his fifth foul with like 8 minutes to go, and was automatically yanked. Like it wasn't like a thought process. It was like a whistle. Quinn turns, takes him out of the game, and then it was a little bit dicey at times. I think they probably made it actually an illegal substitution with like 7 minutes to go. They put Dyson back in after a timeout, but then Quinn, I think, realized the Melo was on the bench because he had 5 fouls too. And then during free throws, without any time coming off the clock, it took Dyson back out, which the refs probably should have stopped. Does it matter? No, just something I noticed because I was there. But anyway, back-to-back stuff like Trae went right at Steph Curry a couple times. He drew off the foul on LaMelo. That was a funny moment when Melo fouled out, and Trae was the one that drew that. And as Trae was still on the ground after he fell down, he went and gave the 6 fingers for the 6 fouls to the Charlotte bench. That's a typical Trae moment. He's always not afraid to be a showman like that. That was a funny moment and a cool thing that happened. The Hawks were in control most of the way. I won't bore you with the back-to-back and all the play-by-play and stuff like that down the stretch here, but they were up 6 with 2 minutes to go. Dyson hits this crazy layup to go up by 8 points. Then it's like, all right, they're probably in control here. Charlotte misses a 3. Dyson gets another great rebound. Finds Hunter for a bucket to go up by 10 with like 90 seconds to go. And I wrote in my notes, this should be over, but I'm not sure it is. That's the exact quote in my notes right now. I'm looking at it right now. And it wasn't over. It should have been, but it wasn't. The Hawks tried to implode a little bit. Of course, the Hornets hit a 3. That was right away. Then Jalen airballs a 3. There was a terrible no call on what I thought was an obvious foul. Trae nutmegged Bridges, got fouled. Obviously, it wasn't called. That led to another bucket. Dyson a nice block on Trae, man, I will say. Trae makes both free throws to get fouled, go by 7, but just like it happened on Wednesday, Charlotte made 3s at the end of the game. So it went all the way to the wire. Like it wasn't like terribly in doubt at any point, but it should have been easier than it was at the end of the game. But anyway, in the end, they escaped with the victory. Tellingly, as we'll get into in a second with the player-by-player stuff, the entire starting 5 was in the plus for the Hawks in this game. The bench was not as productive in this one. Ricochet in particular, Matthews wasn't great either. Not that they were bad, just the plus-minus was not kind. So when Trae was on the court, I was tracking this all year long. They were +9. They were -4 without Trae. That isn't dire, but it's something to keep an eye on all year long. But anyway, that's enough of my observations and my sort of blow-by-blow in this one. But it was – the Hawks were not in control, but they were in control, if that makes sense. Again, they never trailed in the game. They were up 10 with 9 seconds to go. They probably should have covered. They probably should have been a little bit more comfortable, but they held on for dear life and escaped with the victory. All right. More to come on the podcast in a second when it comes to the player-by-player evaluations and some audio, actually, from Quinn Snyder updating things on Bogdanovic. But first, a word from our partners on the show. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel, and the season is now ongoing, of course. Begin things with a big return at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and now you can find a ton of different information sets from latest stats, play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets at FanDuel Sportsbook. You also can begin the season with a great offer for FanDuel, and that is $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel. You should also know this. FanDuel Sportsbook app is really easy to use. They have all stuff you're looking for across the sports betting space, from over-unders to point spreads, money lines, player props, future bets. They have live betting, same-game parlays, and so much more. The app is safe, it's secure, and they cover the entire range of sports as well. NBA is the focus of this show, but even beyond that, they have the NFL, college football, baseball in the World Series right now, hockey, golf, tennis, soccer, auto racing, boxing, MMA, and so much more. And now is an awesome time to sign up with the folks at FanDuel Sportsbook. And the place to go is FanDuel.com to get started and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. One more time, visit FanDuel.com, check out America's #1 sportsbook. All right, and before I dive into the players who did appear in this game, I want to give you an update from Quinn Snyder on Bogey. Of course, I talked about this yesterday on the show, but Bogey was ruled out for this game with hamstring tendinopathy. And you'll hear the question from Caleb Johnson and the answer from Quinn tonight on the latest with Bogdanovic.
Hey, Coach. When it comes to bogey, is that something that concerns you, that you think will linger, or is this just kind of a one-game sort of situation?
Not linger is a little bit ambiguous. I think with these types of things, there's a process that you have to go through. And obviously, he hasn't played a lot in the preseason, maybe just a half of the games, which is reflective, I think, of 80, 79 games last regular season, and really a full summer of training and competition. So I think we're aware of that, and as a result, want him to be 100%, if not close to it. He's not there. I couldn't give you a more specific answer than that.
So as you hear there, largely a non-update in some ways. That's kind of the Quinn experience. I try to share some audio every once in a while for fans to hear what we kind of go through with Quinn and lack of details, we'll say. He certainly did not say he'll be back on Monday or anything like that, so we'll see on that. It's not really what Quinn does to give details, but it's a big TBD for me, but that's the latest what we know right now, and there's been no update beyond the listing on the injury report, and the Hawks play again on Sunday, so stay tuned for more on that as we know it. As for the guys who actually did play in this game, a 9-man rotation for Atlanta in this one. Larry Nance, I actually was talking about this on Press Row with John Hollinger of The Athletic and some other people. I think Larry Nance might be the best player in the NBA who is currently healthy, who has not played in a game this season. Now, there are other guys who are like on his maybe same level, like Aaron Holiday, someone that John brought up, similar level, but like he definitely isn't worse than a lot of these guys. So I think he really might be the best player in the league that has not played yet, who is healthy. But that's just because of the way the Hawks have built their roster, and there you go. Anyway, to the guys who actually did not play very much. V played 15 minutes. He would have played more than this, I think, without the foul trouble, but he had 5 fouls, 3 points, had a steal, had a block. He was active defensively, I thought, in this one. Offensively, kind of just meh. A couple nice passes, I thought, but no assists. +4 in his minutes, and I thought V was okay. Garrison hit 2 threes. That's his main role. That's the line once, actually. Had a rebound, 8 points. Defensively, he was a little bit of a weak link, but not terrible, I didn't think. Did his job, and again, I think the Hawks are going to have to play Garrison as long as Bogey is out just for the shooting, and that was apparent in this one. Ricochet was not the best. 5 points for Zach, no rebounds, 1 assist, did have a block shot, was a game worst, -14 in this game for the Hawks. He was 1 of 5 from the floor, 1 of 4 from 3. The rebounding is a little bit weird at this point. I think he's played 37, 38 minutes so far. He has 1 rebound in 2 games. Now, he's not so physical at this point as a young rookie who is pretty skinny still. I think he's not been terrible or unplayable, but it is a reminder, if you needed one, that rookies take a little bit of time. And I think that it looks kind of funny now. People, and I totally know why this is the case, but like the notion that he just had to start from opening night or whatever, like it's okay. He can take some time here. It's not a problem. I said this on the show Wednesday, but if you missed it, Anthony Edwards was the #1 overall pick and obviously is now a star. He didn't start for the first 17 games of his rookie season on a team that was much, much worse than this Hawks team and behind guys who are not as good as DeAndre Hunter and Dyson Daniels. So there you go on that. Ricochet was probably the worst player in this one. Like he wasn't terrible or unplayable, but there's a reason why he didn't play more because he just wasn't playing very well. Okongwu, 7 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, no turnovers for Okongwu. He was totally fine in this game. He wasn't as outstanding as he was on Wednesday. He didn't dominate the way that he did on Wednesday at times, but I thought he was just rock solid. He is, the Hornets played pretty small at times. They only had 1 center that really played minutes for them. So whenever the Hornets went smaller, it made sense to play Okongwu versus Capella. But yeah, the gap was not very big. I thought Capella, as we'll talk about now, actually was fine in this game. 6 points, 7 rebounds, had 2 blocks and a steal. He had 1 just terrible pass. But he was fine. Just played fine. Both of those guys did their jobs in this one. They weren't outstanding, but it was not a huge drop off there. Elsewhere, Jalen Johnson is not playing very well right now. So there's 2 things that I will say. I'm not worried about Jalen Johnson. It's 2 games. He was really good last year. He's a year older. He was really good in the preseason, by the way, which doesn't matter, but it's obviously a recent data point. But I want him to be more aggressive than he's been so far. Defensively, he's been a little bit hit and miss. There have been some bad mistakes Quinn did talk him up, I think probably purposely after the game about like how he improved in the second half. That is true on film. I think he was better in the second half as the game went along. But he's not been efficient. He was 4-15 from the field in this one. He actually was a game best plus 12. I'm not sure that's actually because of him, but he wasn't terrible. It's kind of funny. I think I'll credit my friend Grant Shirley, who's a good Hawks Twitter follow, for this. It's kind of funny. Like Jalen did not play well, and I'm not backing off of that. He did not play well in this game. But you look up at the end of the game, 16 points, 7 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks, plus 12. It's kind of funny. Like that's what I always say about Trae. Like, even when Trae is bad, he often has big numbers. Jalen wasn't good in this game, but he is talented enough where he kind of just still is useful. Played 41 minutes. That's a lot of minutes for him. But he'll be better. I'm not worried about it. But he wasn't very good in this game or Wednesday. So there you go. Elsewhere, a career high, 18 points for Dyson Daniels in this game. Now, part of that is that he did not play a ton of minutes in New Orleans all the time, but 18 points in 24 minutes for Dyson Daniels. He was 6 of 6 inside the arc, 2 of 4 from 3, which is a good sign there. 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. He had a ton of deflections. Again, he was outstanding in this game. And look, not even I, as like a Dyson Daniels evangelist over the summer, was expecting him to do this the first 2 games. Like, I think he's not always going to be as good as he's been in these first 2 games, but man, he's been so good. And yes, LaMelo had 34 points, I should say. But just like it was with Cam Thomas on Wednesday, if you watch these games, you could not have come away with the fact that Dyson was not really good. So there you go. Like he was excellent on defense, especially, but even on offense, he's been playing with confidence, handling the ball well. I've been really impressed. Other people kind of realize why I like him so much, but he is impacting the game. And look, the physicality, the aggressiveness, it's rubbing off. He's a great teammate too. He's still a young guy, but I'm a big fan, and that's pretty evident. Why? DeAndre Hunter was really good in this game. 24 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, which is a nice number for him. Had a block shot, no turnovers at all. Got to the line 8 times. That's a really good thing for DeAndre Hunter. Took 6 threes. He was really good in this one, like all the way through. He was aggressive. The passing was good. Usually not a strength of his at all. Defensively, he did his job and more in this game. Help side stuff. Like I thought he played really, really well, and he was good on Wednesday too. He wasn't as good as he was tonight, but he's been good through 2 games. And look, I'm not the biggest Hunter fan, but compared to the fan base, I am. Compared to that, I would say there was like a revolt when he started the opener. Like, guys, he's still a useful player. Like, he's a good player. He's not great. Is that a great contract? No, but like he's been playing very well, and this is like why he's going to keep playing. Like he's a useful player, and there you go. But yeah, he was really good in this game, and a big reason why the Hawks won it. And then lastly, Trae Young was awesome. He really was. Here's the best stat for Trae so far. This is actually per Alive Sports Bureau. He is the second player in NBA history, joining Oscar Robertson 63 years ago, to begin the season with at least 30 points and 10 assists in the first 2 games. Now, it's a 2-game sample size. I get that. Trae's also in the top 5 in the history of the league in 30-point, 10-assist games. And it's not all about the numbers. I get that. Like, I'm not always the raw box score numbers guy. I will tell you that right now. But it does paint a picture of like how productive he's been. And he was really, really good tonight. 38 points, 10 assists, 8 rebounds, 4 steals. That I think he probably had 5. Yes, he turned the ball over 7 times. Like, I don't really care. It is what it is. Plus 9. He was 6 of 10 on 2s. He was 5 of 14 on 3s, which isn't like incredible, but it's totally fine on huge volume. Like to see that. Got to the line 13 times. And defensively, he competed. Like I know that anytime I defend Trae Young's defense, it's like, oh, you're being a homer. I'm not a homer, number one. But it's pretty clear if you're watching these games, like he's competing defensively. The caricature of Trae Young is not a thing anymore. Like he's not Gary Payton, nor will he ever be. But he was good defensively in this game. Like there's no way around that. And yeah, there's certain matchups where like his height comes into play. His size comes into play. Like he got blown off the ball at one point under the rim for a layup. Like it's going to happen. But he was good defensively. He made a play the first half where he was diving on the floor to create a steal that led to a Dyson Daniels run out dunk. He draws the offensive foul on LaMelo to foul him out in the final seconds. So like he was awesome in this game on both ends of the floor. So, I'm not sure. I'm not surprised, but I think it's just worth noting like how good he's been. And like through 2 games, look, no one's giving out MVP through 2 games, but he's been one of the top 10 players in the league conservatively in the first week of the season. So it's 2 games, but he's been really good for a long time, and he was in this game as well. All right, that's it for the actual nuts and bolts of this podcast. Some housekeeping real quick before I sign off. This show, Locked on Hawks, has a newsletter now. You can find that at lockedondaily.com. Check that out. Subscribe for me. Also, one more PSA, because people have been asking this again. It happens every once in a while, but there are post-cast episodes after games that will be in the audio-only feeds on Locked on Hawks, which is this podcast. These come from another show on the network. It's from Locked on Sports Atlanta. They have their own YouTube channel, so if you're on YouTube, you won't see this unless you're looking for it. But if you're an audio subscriber, don't be confused or surprised. I'm not on that show, but it's just extra content for you. It will be in your feeds from the network. Nothing less from me, by the way. That's still my same output as always, but that's been happening during the last couple of seasons. Now the season's happening again. They're posting those episodes after the games in the audio feeds from the network. Just extra stuff. Don't panic. I'm still doing my podcast. If that one drops first, mine's coming, I promise you. And stay tuned for all of that. Just want to say that out loud. People were asking again, and I totally get it, but there you go. Lastly, before we sign off on the podcast, the Hawks are now in Oklahoma City on Sunday. So that's their first road game of the season. And again, that's their first real test as far as an opponent is concerned. The Thunder are quite good. They are projected to win the West by some people, at least. So that's a big test. The Hawks actually do have the rest advantage, though, in that game. The Thunder play on Saturday in Chicago, and they have to travel from Chicago back to Oklahoma City on Sunday. Now, it's early in the year. Guys have fresh legs. I get that, but it's still an advantage the Hawks have in that game. But you're still on the road against a really good team, so that's a real test. We'll see how they handle that one. And then after that, the Hawks are back at home on Monday against Washington for 2 games, actually. Washington at home Monday and then Washington on the road next Wednesday. So, as I've said before, they'll be favored for the first 5. The one game they won't be favored in probably is Sunday against Oklahoma City, but I'll be here to talk about that game in depth and detail as always from home, but I'll be covering that one on Sunday and then into the new week. And I really appreciate everybody listening to the podcast. It's been a very, very busy week. I think I did 9 episodes, which is crazy for 5 days, but here we are. Please subscribe to the show. That's the one thing I ask of you. This is a podcast that is free. It costs you $0, but please subscribe and download the podcast anywhere you find your podcast. We're on Apple. We're on Spotify. I'm also on, Overcast and Amazon Music, and then also on YouTube. The best thing you can do is to subscribe on YouTube and also on an audio platform. Kind of do the double dipping thing there. That's very helpful for the show. And tell your friends as well. The podcast help us to grow. I know there are definitely Hawks fans in my life and other people's lives that have not found the podcast yet. So go ahead and share it with them. I'd be very appreciative of that. Follow the show on Twitter/X at Locked on Hawks. Follow me there as well at BT Rowland. Also follow my non-podcast work at patreon.com/BT Rowland. Thanks for listening, everybody. I really do appreciate it. It was a busy week for the Hawks, a productive week for the Hawks at 2-0. And I hope you all enjoy your weekends. I'll be back at the very latest after the game on Sunday, and I'll see you all next time.